A dying girl asks a dangerous man for one last wish, and he says yes. In a world where power means everything and mercy is weakness, one accidental meeting will shatter both their lives. This is a story about loneliness, forgotten kindness, and a promise made on the edge of death. Stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Now, let me take you to where it all began. The fluorescent lights in St. Catherine's Hospital buzzed like dying insects, casting their sterile glow across linoleum floors that smelled of disinfectant and despair. Adrian Voss stood in the wrong corridor, jaw tight, leather coat still damp from the February rain outside. He'd taken a left when he should have gone right, a mistake he wouldn't have made 5 years ago, back when staying sharp meant staying alive. Now he ran half the city's underground, and small errors like this pissed him off more than they should. He checked his phone. No signal in this wing. Typical. The meeting with Christoph was supposed to happen in the administrative building, not this maze of sickness and slow death. Adrian started to turn back when he heard it, a sound so out of place it made him stop cold. Laughter. Not the kind you hear at bars or parties. This was different. Fragile. Like glass about to break. Adrian had built his empire on reading situations, on knowing when to push and when to walk away. Every instinct told him to leave. Instead, he found himself moving toward the sound, toward the partially open door of room 408. The girl inside couldn't have been more than 21, maybe 22. She sat propped up in bed, skeletal hands clutching a remote control, watching some old sitcom on the small TV mounted to the wall. Her skin had that translucent quality that came from too many months indoors, and her dark hair, what was left of it, lay thin against the pillow. She wasn't supposed to notice him. Adrian was good at being invisible, when he wanted to be. But she turned her head, and their eyes met. "You lost?" Her voice came out raspy, like she didn't use it much anymore. Adrian's first instinct was to lie. He was good at that too. But something about her direct gaze made the practiced words stick in his throat. "Yeah," he said finally, looking for the administrative wing. "Wrong floor, you want third." She coughed, reaching for a cup of water on the bedside table. Her hand shook so badly the cup rattled against the plastic. Adrian watched her struggle for 3 seconds before his legs carried him into the room. He picked up the cup and held it while she sipped through the straw. "Thanks." She leaned back, studying him with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. "You don't look like hospital people." "What do hospital people look like?" "Tired, sad, fake cheerful." She tilted her head. "You just look angry." Adrian set the cup down harder than he meant to. "I'm not angry." "Sure." The ghost of a smile crossed her face. "I'm Lena, by the way. Lena Cross." He shouldn't give his real name. Adrian Voss meant something in this city, something that brought problems. But standing in this room with its beeping machines and its dying girl, none of that seemed to matter. Adrian? Just Adrian? For now. Lena laughed again, that fragile sound that had stopped him in the hallway. "Mysterious. I like it. You visiting someone?" "Business meeting." "In a hospital. That's dark." "You have no idea." She shifted in the bed, wincing. Adrian noticed the IV line in her arm, the morphine pump with its steady drip. Cancer, probably. He'd seen enough death to recognize its approach. "So, just Adrian," Lena said. "What kind of business brings you to St. Catherine's on a rainy Tuesday?" "The boring kind." He moved toward the door. This conversation had already gone on too long. "You should rest." "That's all I do." Her voice stopped him at the threshold. "Rest and watch TV and wait for nurses to check if I'm still breathing. Tomorrow's Valentine's Day, you know." Adrian didn't know, didn't care. Dates like that belong to normal people with normal lives. "Yeah?" "Yeah." Lena's fingers twisted in the thin blanket covering her legs. "My mom used to bring me a single rose every Valentine's Day. Just one, wrapped in brown paper. She said a garden of roses was beautiful, but one rose meant you were someone's only choice." Adrian's hand tightened on the doorframe. "That's nice. She died 2 years ago. Car accident." Lena's voice stayed steady, but her knuckles went white on the blanket. "I'm all that's left of the Cross family now. Well, for a little while longer anyway." You got other family coming tomorrow? No. The single word hit harder than it should have. Adrian had spent years building walls, learning not to feel, teaching himself that sentiment was weakness. But standing in this doorway, looking at this girl who'd be dead before spring, something old and buried stirred in his chest. Friends? He tried. Lena's laugh this time held no humor. I had friends. Back when I was healthy, when I could go out, when I didn't look like a skeleton wrapped in skin. Funny how fast people disappear when you stop being fun. Adrian knew about that. Different context, same truth. People stayed around him because they feared him or needed him. The moment he showed weakness, they'd scatter like roaches when the lights came on. So tomorrow you'll be alone. Yeah. She met his eyes again. Story of my life lately. Adrian should have left then, should have walked out, found Christoph, handled his business, and forgotten room 408 ever existed. Instead, he heard himself say, "That's rough." Could be worse, could be dead already. She tried for levity, but it fell flat. At least I'm still here for one more Valentine's Day, even if nobody else is. The machines beeped their steady rhythm. Down the hall, a nurse called for someone named Patricia. The TV show Lena had been watching went to commercial, selling cleaning products to people who might live long enough to need them. Adrian pulled out his phone, checking the time. The meeting with Christoph was in 15 minutes. He had to go. I should stay? Lena's voice came out small, then stronger. Sorry. That was pathetic. You don't even know me. No. Then why did you come in here? Good question. Adrian asked himself the same thing. Heard you laughing, he said finally. Seemed wrong. In a place like this. Joy in the face of death? She smiled. My rebellion against the universe. Probably pointless, but it passes the time. Adrian's phone buzzed. Christoph, asking where he was. He typed a quick response. Running late. Start without me. You don't have to feel sorry for me, Lena said, watching him. I'm not looking for pity. I don't do pity. No, I don't think you do. She leaned her head back against the pillow, suddenly looking exhausted. What do you do, just Adrian? Business. Right, the boring kind. Her eyes drifted closed. You should go. You're meeting. But Adrian didn't move. He stood there in the doorway, this man who'd built an empire on violence and fear, watching a dying girl fight to keep her eyes open. And for reasons he couldn't name, he found himself walking back into the room, pulling the visitor's chair closer to the bed. What are you doing? Lena asked, eyes opening a fraction. Not sure. You're weird. Yeah. She smiled at that. A real smile this time, not the brittle thing from before. I like weird. Adrian sat down, the plastic chair creaking under his weight. His phone buzzed again. Christoph. Probably pissed now. He silenced it. Tell me something, Lena said, her voice getting softer. Something true. Not the business stuff. Something real. Adrian wasn't used to real. His life was built on layers of lies and half-truths, on maintaining distance, on making sure nobody ever got close enough to matter. I don't like hospitals, he said finally. Nobody likes hospitals. No. I mean, I really don't like them. Being in one makes my skin crawl. Then why are you still here? Adrian looked at her, this stranger who'd be dead in weeks, maybe days, and couldn't find an answer that made sense. I don't know, he admitted. Lena's eyes opened wider, studying his face like she was memorizing it. You're scared of something. I'm not. You are. I can see it. She shifted slightly, pain flashing across her face. It's okay. I'm scared too. Of dying? Of being forgotten. Her hand moved toward the water cup again, that same tremor making the journey difficult. Of spending my last days alone and then just disappearing, like I never mattered at all. Adrian reached for the cup without thinking, holding it steady while she drank. When she finished, he set it down carefully. You matter, he said, and was surprised to find he meant it. To who? You just met me. Still, Lena was quiet for a moment. The TV show came back on, canned laughter filling the silence. Neither of them watched it. Adrian? Yeah? Tomorrow, Valentine's Day. She paused, and he could see her gathering courage for something. Would you? I know this is crazy. You're a stranger. But would you maybe come back just for a little while, so I'm not alone? Every rational part of Adrian's brain screamed at him to say no. He had an empire to run, enemies to handle, problems that didn't solve themselves. Getting involved with a dying girl in a hospital room was the definition of pointless. But he thought about her words, of being forgotten, of disappearing like I never mattered at all. He thought about the boy he used to be before Marcus died, before the world taught him that caring was weakness. That boy would have said yes without hesitation. I don't think, Adrian started. It's okay. Lena cut him off quickly, turning her face away. Stupid question. You've got a life. I shouldn't have asked. Adrian stood up. Christoph was probably losing his mind by now. This whole detour had been a mistake, a momentary lapse in judgment. He needed to go, to get back to reality, to remember who he was and what mattered. He made it to the door before his mouth betrayed him. What time? Lena's head turned back so fast it must have hurt. What? Tomorrow. What time? You'll come? Adrian didn't answer right away. He stood there, hand on the doorframe, every instinct warring with something deeper he'd thought long dead. Yeah, he heard himself say. I'll come. Really? Yeah. Lena's face transformed. The exhaustion lifted, replaced by something Adrian hadn't seen there before. Hope. It made him feel like he'd just promised the moon and had no idea how to deliver. 2 o'clock, she asked. Afternoon visiting hours. 2 o'clock. You won't. I'll be here. He said it with more certainty than he felt. Lena's smile could have powered the whole hospital. Thank you, Adrian. You have no idea what this means. He nodded and left before he could change his mind, walking quickly down the corridor toward the elevator. His phone exploded with messages the moment he got signal back. Christoph, furious. Chen asking about the next shipment. Dmitri, reporting problems at the South Docks. Normal. This was normal. His real life. The one that mattered. Room 408 was already fading in his rear-view mirror. The meeting with Christoph went badly. The Russian was pissed about being kept waiting, and Adrian's head wasn't in the game. They were supposed to be negotiating territory lines, but Adrian kept losing his train of thought, kept seeing Lena's face when she'd asked him not to leave her alone. You listening to me, Voss? Christoph leaned forward, gold teeth glinting under the harsh lights of the administrative conference room. Yeah, you want Parkside Avenue. Parkside and the warehouses. The warehouses aren't on the table. They are now. Christoph's smile held no warmth. Unless you want problems. A month ago, Adrian would have handled this smoothly. Would have either negotiated or made it clear that threats didn't work on him. Tonight, he just felt tired. Take Parkside, he said. Leave the warehouses. We're done here. Christoph's eyes narrowed. That easy? That easy. You feeling okay, Voss? You seem off. Adrian stood up, buttoning his coat. I'm fine. We done? Yeah, we're done. But Christoph watched him with the calculating look of a predator sensing weakness. Adrian didn't care. He walked out of St. Catherine's into the rain, which had picked up to a steady downpour. His driver, Marcus, named after his dead brother in a moment of sentiment Adrian had regretted ever since, waited by the black sedan. Where to, boss? Home. The drive across the city usually centered Adrian, reminded him who he was. Tonight it just felt empty. The streets passed by. His streets, the ones he controlled, but they looked different somehow. Smaller. Less important. His penthouse apartment overlooked the harbor, 32 floors of steel and glass that screamed success. Adrian had bought it 5 years ago, right after taking control of the Eastern Territories. It was beautiful, modern, and completely devoid of warmth. He poured himself 3 fingers of scotch and stood by the window, watching the rain blur the city lights into abstract streaks of color. Somewhere out there, in a hospital bed, Lena Cross was probably asleep. Dreaming of what? A miracle? More time? A Valentine's Day that didn't hurt so much? Adrian's phone buzzed. Chen, about the shipment. He ignored it. Another buzz. Dmitri, about the docks. Ignored. His reflection in his window stared back at him, 31 years old, hard-faced, expensive suit, empty eyes. This was what success looked like. This was what he'd built when he stopped being the boy who cared and became the man who didn't. He thought about Lena's question. What do you do, just Adrian? The real answer, he hurt people. Not always physically, though that happened too. Mostly he hurt them by existing in their world, by being the thing that scared them into line. He was good at it. It paid well. And it meant absolutely nothing standing in his empty apartment, promising to spend Valentine's Day with a dying girl because she'd asked him not to let her be alone. Adrian finished his scotch and poured another. Tomorrow he'd go to the hospital, sit for an hour, fulfill his promise, and leave. It was the right thing to do. The decent thing. Then he'd get back to his life and forget room 408 ever happened. Simple. Except nothing felt simple anymore. He pulled out his phone and typed Valentine's Day traditions into the search bar, then immediately deleted it. What was he doing? He wasn't some lovesick teenager trying to impress a girl. This was charity work, pity, a good deed to balance the scales of a life spent doing bad things. But his fingers moved of their own accord, typing the search again. Results flooded the screen. Flowers, chocolate, romantic dinners. He scrolled past the nonsense, looking for something real. A single rose means you're someone's only choice. Lena's words echoed in his head. Her mother's tradition. One rose wrapped in brown paper. Adrian set his phone down and walked to the window again. The rain hadn't let up. February in this city was always wet, always gray, always on the edge of something worse. Like Lena. On the edge. Waiting. He should sleep. Morning would come fast, and he had business to handle before the hospital. The world didn't stop turning just because one girl asked for company on Valentine's Day. But Adrian stood there until the scotch was gone and the city lights began to blur, not from rain, but from something else entirely. Something he'd trained himself not to feel for so long he'd forgotten the sensation. It felt like breaking. It felt like becoming human again, and it scared him more than any enemy ever had. Morning came harsh and gray. Adrian woke on the couch, still dressed, neck stiff from the awkward angle. His phone showed 17 missed calls and 34 messages. The Empire demanded attention, as it always did. He showered, shaved, put on a different suit. Black today, because everything in his closet was black or gray. Colors were for people who didn't need to disappear into shadows. Chen called at 8. Where were you last night? Busy? The shipment from Toronto. Handle it. Boss, you said you'd... I said handle it, Chen. Adrian's voice came out harder than intended. You want your cut. You do your job. Clear? Silence on the other end. Then, Crystal. Adrian hung up and immediately regretted it. Chen was solid, had been with him for 4 years. Snapping at him was stupid, emotional, and Adrian didn't do emotional. Except apparently he did now because all he could think about was 2 o'clock. He went through the motions, coffee, emails, calls to his lieutenants. The city's underworld ran on routine, and Adrian was its clockwork heart. Territory disputes, shipment schedules, protection payments, police contacts who needed their palms greased. Same thing, different day. At noon, he told Marcus to bring the car around. Where are we going, boss? Adrian almost said the hospital. Almost, but that would raise questions, and questions led to weakness. And weakness in his world got you killed. Shopping first, then an appointment. Marcus raised an eyebrow but didn't ask. Good man. The flower shop on Fifth Avenue was the kind of place Adrian never entered. Too bright, too fragrant, too alive. The woman behind the counter looked up from arranging lilies and did a double take at his appearance. Black suit, hard eyes, the kind of man who didn't belong among roses and baby's breath. Can I help you? Her voice wavered slightly. I need flowers. What kind? Adrian realized he had no idea. Roses. Red ones. How many? We have beautiful arrangements, or if you're looking for something special, 1 rose. The words came out before he thought about it. Just 1, wrapped in brown paper. The woman's expression shifted from nervous to curious. Just 1? Yeah. That's actually really sweet. Most guys go for the big showy bouquets, but 1 rose, wrapped simple, that's classic. Elegant. She moved to a cooler in the back, pulling out long-stemmed roses. These are our best. Fresh this morning. She showed him 3 options. Deep red, blood red, crimson. They all looked the same to Adrian. That one, he pointed at random. Perfect choice. She wrapped it carefully in brown paper, tying it with simple twine. Someone's lucky. Adrian paid cash and left before the conversation could continue. The rose felt wrong in his hand. Too delicate, too vulnerable. He set it carefully on the seat beside him in the car. Hospital now? Marcus asked. Yeah. You sick, boss? No. Marcus waited for more explanation. When none came, he put the car in gear and headed west toward St. Catherine's. They drove in silence, which suited Adrian fine. He wasn't ready to explain, not to Marcus, not to himself, why he was doing this. Traffic was light for Valentine's Day. Most people were probably at work, planning romantic evenings that would disappoint them. Adrian had never understood the appeal. Manufactured sentiment, forced emotion, overpriced restaurants full of couples pretending everything was perfect. But sitting in room 408 with a dying girl who just wanted not to be alone? That made sense in a way Valentine's Day never had. They pulled up to St. Catherine's at 1:45. Adrian sat in the car for a full minute, rose in hand, questioning everything. He could drive away. Should drive away. Lena wouldn't blame him. She'd said it herself. He was a stranger. No obligation, no connection, except there was a connection. He'd promised. And Adrian Voss might be a criminal, a killer, a man without mercy in business. But he'd never broken a promise. Not since Marcus died. Wait here, he told his driver. How long? Hour. Maybe 2. Marcus nodded, already pulling out his phone. Adrian walked into the hospital with the rose hidden inside his coat, feeling like an idiot. The elevator ride to the 4th floor seemed to take forever. His reflection in the polished doors showed a man out of place, carrying flowers to a girl he barely knew. The corridor was quieter today. Fewer nurses, fewer visitors. Valentine's Day meant skeletons, crews, and people taking time off to be with loved ones. The healthy ones, anyway. The dying ones stayed right where they were. Room 4. 08's door was closed. Adrian knocked softly. Come in. Lena's voice, stronger than yesterday. He pushed open the door and stopped. She'd tried. Despite everything, the IV, the morphine, the body that was shutting down, she'd tried to look nice. Her thin hair was brushed. Her lips had a touch of color. She wore a pink sweater someone must have brought from home, too big now on her skeletal frame. And her face when she saw him, when she realized he'd actually come, hit Adrian like a physical blow. You came, she whispered. You actually came. Said I would. People say a lot of things. Her eyes went to the rose still half hidden in his coat. Is that... Adrian pulled it out, suddenly self-conscious. You mentioned your mom, the tradition. I thought... He didn't finish. Couldn't finish. Because Lena's face crumpled, and tears started streaming down her cheeks, and Adrian had no idea what to do. Is this wrong? No. She reached for the rose with shaking hands. No, it's perfect. It's the most perfect thing anyone's ever done for me. Adrian handed it over, watching as she brought it to her nose, breathing in the scent. Her hands trembled so badly he thought she might drop it, but she held on like it was the most precious thing in the world. Maybe, in this room, it was. Brown paper and everything, she said through tears. How did you know? You told me. But you remembered, you listened. She looked up at him and Adrian felt something crack in his chest. People don't listen anymore, not really, but you did. He sat down in the visitor's chair, uncomfortable with her gratitude, her tears, the raw emotion filling the small room. This wasn't his world. He dealt in threats and violence, in power plays and calculated moves, not in roses and tears and dying girls who looked at him like he'd hung the moon. It's just a flower, he said. No? Lena clutched it tighter. It's everything. They sat in silence for a while, Lena holding the rose like it might disappear if she let go, Adrian trying to figure out what he was supposed to do now. The TV was off. The machines beeped their constant rhythm. Outside the window, rain started again, soft against the glass. I didn't think you'd really come, Lena said finally, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. Last night, after you left, I kept telling myself not to get my hopes up, that you were just being polite, that you'd wake up this morning and realize how crazy it was. Maybe I did. But you came anyway. Yeah. She smiled at that, setting the rose carefully on the bedside table where she could see it. Why? Adrian had asked himself the same question 100 times between last night and now. He still didn't have a good answer. You asked me not to let you be alone, he said. So I'm here. That simple? Nothing's ever simple. Lena shifted in the bed, wincing. The movement was small, but Adrian saw the pain flash across her face. She caught him watching and tried to hide it. Don't, he said. Don't what? Pretend it doesn't hurt. I'm not. You are. Adrian leaned forward, elbows on his knees. You don't have to do that, not with me. Lena was quiet for a moment, studying him with that same intense look from yesterday, like she could see through the walls he'd spent years building. It hurts all the time now, she admitted. The morphine helps, but there's always this background hum of pain, like static on a radio. You get used to it, mostly. Learn to live with it. That's a shit way to live. Better than the alternative. She laughed, but it sounded hollow. Well, maybe not better. Different. Adrian didn't know what to say to that. His world was built on action, on problems that could be solved with money or force or both. Cancer didn't care about either. It just took and took until there was nothing left. Tell me about your life, Lena said suddenly. The real stuff. Not the business meeting nonsense. There's not much to tell. Liar, she smiled. Everyone has a story. What's yours? Adrian's jaw tightened. He never talked about his past, about the boy he used to be before everything went wrong. That person was dead, buried under years of necessary violence and calculated moves. But Lena was looking at him with those wide eyes, holding her single rose, asking him to be human for just a little while. And somehow, impossibly, he found himself talking. I had a brother, he heard himself say. Marcus. He was 2 years younger than me. Was? He died 11 years ago. Lena's expression softened. I'm sorry. Don't be. You didn't know him. Still, she paused. How did it happen? Adrian's hands curled into fists. He never talked about this. Never. But the words kept coming anyway, like a dam breaking after holding back floodwater for too long. He got sick. Pneumonia, they said at first. Then it turned out to be something worse, complications. The doctors threw around a lot of medical terms that basically meant we were screwed. He stared at the floor, seeing a different hospital room, a different dying person. We didn't have money for good care, for specialists. So we went to a place like this, public hospital, overworked staff, not enough beds. Like St. Catherine's. Exactly like St. Catherine's. Adrian's voice came out flat. He was 14. I was 16. Our mom worked 2 jobs, but it wasn't enough. Never enough. I watched him get worse every day, watched the light go out of his eyes, and I couldn't do anything. Couldn't save him. Couldn't even afford to make him comfortable at the end. The machines beeped. Rain pattered against the window. Lena waited, not pushing, just letting him speak. He died on a Tuesday, Adrian continued, March 15th. I was holding his hand. He looked at me and said, "Oh, don't be sad, Adrian. At least it doesn't hurt anymore." Then he closed his eyes, and that was it. 14 years old, and grateful to be dying because at least the pain would stop. That's when you changed. It wasn't a question. Lena said it like she could see the before and after written on his face. Yeah, Adrian admitted. That's when I learned that being good, being kind, being decent, none of it mattered. The world didn't care about Marcus, didn't care that he was smart and funny and deserved better. So I stopped caring back, stopped being the kid who tried to do right and became someone who did what was necessary. Necessary for what? For survival, for power, for making sure I'd never be helpless like that again. He looked up, meeting her eyes. I'm not a good person, Lena. You should know that. The things I've done, I don't care. You should. But I don't. She reached for the water cup, and this time Adrian didn't help, watching her struggle through it herself. When she finished, she set it down with deliberate care. You want to know what I think? Not really. Too bad. I think you're still that 16-year-old boy holding his brother's hand. You just buried him under a lot of anger and sharp edges. You're wrong. Am I? Lena tilted her head. Then why are you here? Why did you bring me a rose wrapped in brown paper? Why did you remember something I said once in passing? Adrian didn't have an answer for that. Or he did, but it was the wrong one. The one that made him vulnerable, that cracked the armor he needed to survive in his world. I should go, he said, starting to stand. Please don't. Lena's voice came out small. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have pushed. It's just... She paused, choosing her words carefully. It's just that I'm dying, Adrian. And when you're dying, you stop caring about polite conversation, about pretending. I look at you and I see someone who's been hurt, someone who's scared to be hurt again. And I recognize that because I'm the same way. You're not scared. I'm terrified. Her laugh was bitter. Every night I close my eyes and wonder if I'll wake up. Every morning I do wake up and I'm surprised and disappointed at the same time. Because I'm tired, Adrian. So tired of fighting, but I'm also scared of what comes next or what doesn't come next. Adrian sat back down slowly. What do you mean? What if there's nothing? What if we just stop existing and that's it? All the pain, all the struggle, all the moments that made me who I am, gone, erased, like I never mattered at all. Her voice cracked. That's what scares me most, not dying, but being forgotten. The words hit too close to home. Adrian thought about Marcus every day, kept him alive in memory, if nothing else. But who would remember Lena? No family, no friends who visited, no one to carry her forward into the future. Just a girl in room 408 who'd be dead by spring. I'll remember you, he said quietly. Lena's eyes filled with tears again. You don't have to say that. I'm not saying it because I have to. They looked at each other across the small space between bed and chair, this dying girl and this broken man, and something passed between them. Recognition, maybe, or understanding. Two people who'd been hurt by the world finding a moment of honest connection in a sterile hospital room on Valentine's Day. The door opened suddenly, breaking the moment. A nurse walked in, young and perky, carrying a chart. How are we doing today, Lena? She barely glanced at Adrian. Pain levels? Fine, Lena said, wiping her eyes quickly. I'm fine. Scale of 1 to 10? 4. The nurse made a note. We can adjust your meds if you need. No, I want to stay clear, for today. The nurse looked up at that, then at Adrian, then back to Lena. Understanding dawned on her face. Okay, well, I'll be back to check vitals in an hour. Push the button if you need anything. She left, and the moment stretched out again. Adrian realized he'd been holding his breath. She thinks you're my boyfriend, Lena said, a hint of amusement in her voice. Should I correct her? Why bother? Let her think something nice for once. Lena adjusted the rose on her bedside table. Tell me more about Marcus. What was he like before he got sick? Adrian hadn't talked about his brother in years. Not the real Marcus, the one who existed before the hospital. But sitting here with Lena, it felt okay, safe even. He was a pain in my ass, Adrian said, and was surprised to find himself almost smiling. Always getting into trouble, always dragging me along. He'd find a stray dog and insist we take it home. Mom would say no, and Marcus would hide it in our room for a week before she noticed. Did you get in trouble? All the time. But Marcus had this way of talking himself out of things. Big eyes, innocent face. He'd look at Mom and say, but the dog was hungry, and she'd melt. Adrian shook his head. I was the serious one. He was the dreamer. What did he dream about? Everything. He wanted to be a marine biologist, then an astronaut, then a chef. Changed his mind every week. But he'd commit to it completely, check out every book from the library, drive me crazy talking about it. The memory felt distant now, like it belonged to someone else. He was good, though. Really good. The kind of person who made the world better just by being in it. He sounds wonderful. He was. Adrian's throat tightened, and the world killed him anyway. Lena was quiet for a long moment, then she said, I had a dog once. When I was little, before my dad left. Yeah? Golden retriever named Sunny. Original, right? She smiled at the memory. He was the best thing in my life for about 3 years. Then one day he got out of the yard and got hit by a car. I was 9. I cried for a week straight. I'm sorry. My mom told me that grief is just love with no place to go. That Sunny took a piece of my heart with him, but that was okay because it meant he mattered, that he'd always matter, even if he wasn't here anymore. Adrian thought about that, about Marcus taking a piece of his heart, about building walls around what was left so nothing else could get in or out. Your mom sounds like she was smart. She was. Lena's expression grew distant. She worked as a secretary at a law firm. Nothing glamorous, but she loved it. Made good money, gave me a stable life after my dad bailed. Then one night she was driving home from work and some drunk driver ran a red light. She died instantly. They told me she didn't suffer. Did that help, knowing she didn't suffer? No. Lena's laugh was sharp. Not even a little bit, because I suffered. I still suffer. Every single day I wake up and remember she's gone, and I'm alone. The machines beeped their rhythm. Outside, the rain picked up again, drumming against the window with increasing intensity. Adrian watched water streak down the glass and thought about loneliness, about how it could kill you just as surely as any disease. Tell me something happy, he said suddenly. A good memory. Before all this. Lena blinked, surprised by the request. Then her face softened. Okay. There was this time, I must have been 8 or 9. It was pouring rain, just like today. My mom was walking me home from school, and we didn't have an umbrella. She smiled at the memory. We were getting soaked. I was crying because I was cold and miserable. And then this boy, maybe a year older than me, came up and held his umbrella over my head. Adrian felt something cold settle in his stomach. He didn't say anything, Lena continued, just walked with us the whole way to my building, keeping the umbrella over me while he got drenched. When we got to my door, I tried to thank him, but he just smiled and ran off. She touched the rose absently. I never saw him again. Never got to tell him what that meant to me. How that one small kindness on a terrible day made everything feel less awful. Adrian couldn't breathe, couldn't move, because he remembered. 20 years ago, maybe more. He'd been 10, walking home from school with his mother's old umbrella. It had been raining hard, and he'd seen a little girl crying on the sidewalk, her mother trying to comfort her. And Adrian, still innocent then, still the kind of boy who helped without thinking about it, had walked over and held the umbrella above her head. He'd gotten soaked, caught a cold that lasted a week. His mother had scolded him for ruining a perfectly good shirt. But the little girl had stopped crying. Adrian? Lena's voice pulled him back. You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. He couldn't tell her, couldn't say it out loud, because if he did, it would mean something, would create a connection that went deeper than a chance meeting in a hospital corridor, would make this whole thing matter in ways that scared him more than any threat he'd ever faced. I'm fine, he managed, just thinking. About what? Nothing important. But Lena was watching him with those sharp eyes, and he knew she didn't believe him. She was too smart, too observant, even in her dying state. It's funny, she said slowly, how kindness works, how one small thing can stick with you forever. That boy with the umbrella. I think about him sometimes. Wonder who he became. If he's happy. If he knows that what he did mattered. Adrian's hands were shaking. He clenched them into fists, pressing them against his thighs. Maybe he doesn't remember, he said, his voice rough. Maybe it was just a random thing, didn't mean anything. Or maybe it meant everything. Lena leaned back against her pillow, exhaustion creeping into her face. Maybe that's the point of kindness. You never know what impact you're having, but you do it anyway. The nurse came back then, saving Adrian from having to respond. She checked Lena's vitals, adjusted the IV, asked about pain levels again. Lena answered in monosyllables, her energy clearly fading. You should rest, the nurse said. You've been up a while. I don't want to rest. But even as Lena said it, her eyes were drooping. I want to stay awake. I'll be here, Adrian said. When you wake up. I'm not going anywhere. Lena's eyes opened wider, fighting sleep. Promise? Promise. She smiled, and it was the last thing he saw before her eyes closed. Her breathing evened out within minutes, the morphine and exhaustion pulling her under. Adrian watched her sleep, this girl who'd remembered a kindness from 20 years ago, who'd held on to it like a lifeline, and he'd been the one who gave it. The realization settled over him like a weight. This wasn't random. This wasn't coincidence. Somehow, impossibly, the universe had brought them back together. The boy who'd shared his umbrella and the girl who'd never forgotten it. Adrian stood up carefully, not wanting to wake her. He should leave, should walk out of this room and never come back. Because staying meant caring, and caring meant vulnerability, and vulnerability in his world got you destroyed. But he'd promised. And more than that, he wanted to stay. He moved to the window, watching rain stream down the glass. His reflection stared back, older, harder, meaner than the boy who'd walked in the rain 20 years ago. What would that boy think of what he'd become? Would he be proud or horrified? Adrian's phone buzzed. Chen again, asking about tonight's meeting with the suppliers. He typed a quick response. Reschedule. Another buzz. Dimitri, about the South Dock situation. Handle it yourself. A third buzz. Christoph following up on last night. Not now. His empire was calling, demanding attention. But Adrian silenced his phone and returned to the chair beside Lena's bed. He sat down, settled in, and waited for her to wake up. An hour passed. Then 2. The rain continued outside, steady and relentless. Adrian watched Lena sleep, watched the rise and fall of her chest, watched the machines track her failing body's struggle to keep going. She woke sometime after 4, blinking slowly in the dim light. The sun had gone down early, hidden behind storm clouds. February in the city was always dark. You stayed, she whispered. Told you I would. How long was I asleep? Couple hours? Lena groaned. I'm sorry, what a terrible Valentine's Day date. I pass out and leave you sitting in a hospital room. It's not a date. No? She smiled weakly. You brought me a rose. You stayed for hours. Sounds like a date to me. You have a twisted definition of romance, says the man who showed up. Her hand moved toward the water cup, trembling worse than before. This time Adrian helped without being asked, holding it steady while she sipped. Thank you. Stop thanking me. Why? You keep doing things worth thanking. Adrian set the cup down, frustrated. I'm not a good person, Lena. You keep acting like I am, but I'm not. The things I've done, the people I've hurt, I don't care about that. You should. But I don't. She reached out suddenly, her skeletal hand grasping his. Her grip was weak, barely there, but it stopped him cold. I see you, Adrian. Not what you've done. Not what you think you are. I see who you actually are underneath all that anger. And who's that? The boy with the umbrella. Adrian froze. His heart hammered against his ribs. She couldn't know. There was no way she could know. What? The boy who helped a crying girl in the rain. Lena's eyes locked onto his. It was you, wasn't it? He should lie, should deny it, should protect himself from whatever this was becoming. But looking at her hand holding his, at her face so full of certainty, he couldn't. Yeah, he said quietly. It was me. Lena's breath caught. Tears started streaming down her face, and she was smiling and crying at the same time. I knew it, she whispered. When you talked about Marcus, about being 10 years old, about your mom, something clicked. The timeline matched, the age matched, and the way you reacted when I told the story. She squeezed his hand harder. It was you. It was always you. Adrian felt like the ground had dropped out from under him. 20 years since he'd been that boy, since he'd done one simple kind thing without thinking about it. And that little girl had remembered, had held on to it through her father leaving, her mother dying, her own body betraying her, had held on to it like it mattered. It was nothing, he said, but his voice cracked. Just an umbrella. It was everything. Lena pulled his hand closer, pressing it against her chest. Don't you see? You showed me that kindness existed, that people could be good just because. I was 8 years old and miserable, and you made it better. You didn't have to. You got nothing out of it. But you did it anyway. And look where it got me. Adrian's voice came out harsh. I kept being kind, kept trying to help people. And the world took my brother and taught me that kindness is weakness. That's not what it taught you. Then what? Lena's grip tightened. It taught you that kindness costs, that it hurts. But you did it anyway back then, and you're doing it now. You came here. You brought me a rose. You stayed even though every instinct probably told you to run. She coughed, her body shaking. "You're still that boy, Adrian. You just forgot for a while." Adrian couldn't speak. The walls he'd built so carefully were crumbling, and he didn't know how to stop it, didn't know if he wanted to. "I spent 20 years looking for you," Lena said softly. "Not literally, but in my head. Every time someone was cruel, I'd remember Umbrella Boy and tell myself good people existed. That kindness was real." She smiled through her tears. "And now here you are, right when I need you most." "I can't save you." "I don't need saving. I just need not to be alone." The machines beeped. The rain fell, and Adrian sat there holding the hand of a dying girl who'd remembered him when he'd forgotten himself and felt something long dead stirring back to life. It felt like hope. It felt like terror. It felt like coming home to a place he'd tried to forget existed. "Don't leave," Lena whispered, her energy fading again. "Please don't leave." "I won't," Adrian promised. "I'm right here." She smiled and closed her eyes, still holding his hand. And Adrian sat there in the growing dark, watching her breathe, thinking about umbrellas and roses and the strange, cruel kindness of a universe that brought two people together twice. Once to plant a seed, once to watch it bloom, even if the garden was dying. Adrian stayed until the night shift nurses started their rounds, until visiting hours officially ended and a stern-faced woman in scrubs told him he needed to leave. Lena was asleep again, her breathing shallow but steady, her hand still loosely holding his. "I'll come back tomorrow," he told the nurse quietly. She looked at him differently than the younger one had, like she'd seen too many people make promises they wouldn't keep. "Visiting hours start at 10, was all she said. Adrian carefully extracted his hand from Lena's grip. She stirred but didn't wake. He stood there for a moment, looking down at her pale face, the rose still on her bedside table. Then he left before he could second-guess himself. The rain had stopped, but the city was still wet, streetlights reflecting off puddles like scattered stars. Marcus had the car running, heat blasting. "Long appointment," his driver said neutrally. "Yeah." "Everything okay?" Adrian didn't answer. He stared out the window as they drove through empty streets, thinking about umbrellas and dying girls, and the boy he used to be. That boy felt closer now than he had in years, like a ghost standing just behind his shoulder, watching everything he'd become. His phone had 23 missed calls. Adrian ignored them all. The penthouse felt even emptier than usual. He poured scotch, didn't drink it, stood at the window, didn't see the view. His mind kept returning to room 408, to Lena's face when she realized who he was, to the weight of her hand in his. He thought about what she'd said, that he was still the boy with the umbrella, just buried under anger and sharp edges. Part of him wanted to believe it. Part of him knew better. That boy died with Marcus. What was left was something harder, meaner, built for survival in a world that didn't forgive weakness. You couldn't run an empire on kindness, couldn't control territory through compassion. The moment Adrian showed softness, his enemies would tear him apart. But Lena wasn't his empire, wasn't his business. She was just a dying girl who remembered one good thing he'd done in a lifetime of bad ones. And she was running out of time. Adrian finally drank the scotch, then poured another. By the time he fell asleep on the couch, fully dressed for the second night in a row, dawn was breaking over the harbor. His phone woke him 4 hours later. Chen calling for the third time. "What?" Adrian answered, voice rough. "Where the hell have you been? Christoph's threatening to back out of the Parkside deal, says you're acting unstable. Dimitri needs answers about the shipment, and the suppliers from last night are pissed you didn't show." Adrian rubbed his face. "Reschedule everything." "For when?" "I don't know. Next week." Silence on the other end, then, carefully, "Boss, are you okay?" "I'm fine." "Because you're not acting fine. You missed 2 major meetings, you're not answering calls, and now you want to push everything back a week?" Chen's voice dropped lower. "People are starting to talk. Say you're losing your edge. Let them talk." "Adrian?" Chen never used his first name. "What's going on?" Adrian thought about lying, about making up some excuse that would satisfy Chen and keep the questions at bay. But he was tired of lies, tired of pretending. "I'm dealing with something," he said finally. "Personal." "Personal?" "Yeah." "You don't do personal." "Well, I'm doing it now." Adrian stood up, wincing at the stiffness in his neck. "Handle what you can. Push back what you can't. I'll be available by phone but not in person for a few days. A few days? Boss, the Kristoff situation? Give him the warehouses. Chen's shock was audible. What? You said those were non-negotiable. They were. Now they're not. Adrian walked to the window, looking out at the gray morning. Is there anything else? Yeah, there's a lot else, but I'm guessing you don't want to hear it. Not today, Chen sighed. All right, I'll do what I can. But Adrian, whatever this personal thing is, be careful. Weakness gets noticed in our business, and noticed gets you killed. I know. He hung up before Chen could say more. His driver was probably wondering the same things. Where Adrian's head was. Why he was acting strange. What had changed. But Marcus was paid to drive, not to question. Adrian showered, shaved, put on another suit. He looked at himself in the mirror and saw the same hard face, the same cold eyes. But something was different underneath. Something was shifting, breaking loose, and he didn't know how to stop it, didn't know if he wanted to. He stopped at the same flower shop on Fifth Avenue. The woman behind the counter recognized him. Another single rose? Yeah, she smiled. I knew it was for someone special. How'd yesterday go? Fine? Just fine? Come on, give me something. Did she like it? Adrian thought about Lena's tears, about her face crumpling in gratitude over something so simple. She liked it. I knew she would. The woman wrapped another rose in brown paper, her movements practiced. You know what? This one's on the house. You don't have to. Consider it my Valentine's gift to you both. Anyone who appreciates a single rose over a gaudy bouquet deserves a break. She handed it over with a wink. Same time tomorrow? Adrian hadn't planned on tomorrow, hadn't planned past today, but he found himself nodding. Maybe. I'll be here. He left with the rose, feeling strange about the woman's kindness. People in his world didn't give things away for free. Everything had a price, a motive, an angle, but the flower shop lady had just smiled and wished him well. Maybe the world outside his empire wasn't as dark as he'd convinced himself it was. St. Catherine's looked different in daylight. Less oppressive, more just sad. Adrian walked through corridors he was starting to recognize, past nurses who no longer gave him suspicious looks. He was becoming a familiar face in room 408, the boyfriend who visited every day. Except he wasn't the boyfriend. Wasn't anything, really. Just a ghost from a dying girl's past, trying to figure out why the universe had brought them back together. Lena was awake when he arrived, staring at the ceiling. She turned her head at the sound of the door, and her face transformed when she saw him. You came back. Said I would. I know, but... She trailed off, not finishing the thought. I'm glad you're here. Adrian set the new rose next to yesterday's. Lena's eyes widened. You brought another one? Woman at the shop insisted. The same woman? Yeah. Lena smiled. She probably thinks you're the most romantic man in the world, bringing single roses wrapped in brown paper. Or the cheapest. No, there's nothing cheap about this. She touched both roses gently. These mean more than 100 fancy ones ever could. Adrian sat down in what was becoming his chair. Lena looked worse today, her skin more translucent, the circles under her eyes darker. But she was trying to smile, trying to be present. How are you feeling? He asked. Honest answer? Yeah. Like death. Which I guess makes sense. She laughed, but it turned into a cough that shook her whole body. When it subsided, she wiped her mouth with a tissue. Sorry, not exactly attractive. You don't have to be attractive. No? What do I have to be? Adrian thought about it. Real. Just be real. That I can do? Lena shifted in the bed, trying to find a comfortable position. There probably wasn't one anymore. I've been thinking about yesterday. About the umbrella. About you. Don't? Why not? Because it doesn't change anything. It changes everything. Lena's voice was firm despite her weakness. Don't you see? We were connected all this time. You did something kind without thinking about it, and it shaped my entire life. That has to mean something. It means I was a stupid kid who didn't know better. No. She reached for his hand, and he let her take it. It means you were good. And you're still good, Adrian. You just forgot. I'm not. Yes, you are. Her grip was weaker today, barely there. You're sitting in a hospital room with someone you barely know instead of doing whatever important business you have. You brought me flowers 2 days in a row. You listened when I talked about my mom, about Sunny, about being scared. Good people do those things. Bad people don't. Adrian wanted to argue, wanted to list all the reasons she was wrong, all the terrible things he'd done that proved he wasn't the person she thought he was. But looking at her face, seeing the conviction there, he couldn't. You're dying, he said instead. That doesn't give you magical insight into people. Maybe it does. When you're dying, you stop seeing what people pretend to be. You just see what they are. She coughed again, softer this time. And you're good, Adrian, even if you don't believe it. They sat in silence for a while. The machines beeped. Somewhere down the hall, a doctor was paged, life and death continuing their eternal dance in the corridors of St. Catherine's. Tell me about your empire, Lena said suddenly. Adrian's head snapped up. What? Your empire? Your business? The thing that keeps you busy? She smiled at his expression. Come on, I'm not stupid. You show up in expensive suits, you have a driver, you talk about territory and meetings. You're either very successful or very illegal. You don't want to know. But I do. I want to know everything about you, because I don't have time for mystery. The bluntness hit hard. Adrian had been dancing around her condition, avoiding the reality. But Lena wasn't avoiding anything. She was staring death in the face and demanding honesty. It's not a nice story, he warned. I don't need nice, I need real. So Adrian told her. Not everything. Some things were too dark, too brutal, but enough. He told her about building his organization from nothing, about taking territory piece by piece, about becoming someone people feared. He told her about the money and the power and the hollow satisfaction of controlling half the city's underground. Lena listened without judgment, her eyes never leaving his face. Are you scared? She asked when he finished. Of what? Of dying, of losing what you built, of it all meaning nothing in the end. Adrian hadn't expected that question. I don't think about it. Liar. He almost smiled. You're calling me a liar? When you lie, yeah. She squeezed his hand. Everyone's scared of dying, Adrian. Even crime bosses. Maybe especially crime bosses. Why especially? Because you've hurt people. And when death comes, you have to face that. Face what you've done and who you've become. She paused. Unless you change. People don't change. Yes, they do. I've seen it. My mom's sister used to be an alcoholic. Destroyed her life, hurt everyone around her. Then one day she just stopped. Got sober, stayed sober, became a different person. Lena's voice was getting tired. You changed once already. From umbrella boy to who you are now, you can change again. Into what? Into whoever you want to be. Adrian shook his head. It's not that simple. It never is. But it's possible. A nurse came in then, the same stern one from last night. She checked Lena's vitals with practiced efficiency, her mouth set in a thin line. Your numbers are dropping, she said bluntly. I know. We should increase the morphine, make you more comfortable. No, not yet. Lena's voice was firm. I want to stay clear. Lena, please, just a little longer. The nurse looked at Adrian, then back to Lena. A little longer, but not much. You're in pain. I can handle it. After the nurse left, Adrian leaned forward. Why are you refusing pain meds? Because they make me fuzzy, make everything distant. Lena met his eyes. And I want to be present for this. For you. However long we have. However long we have, Adrian repeated. The words felt heavy, final. Days, maybe. If I'm lucky. She said it matter-of-factly, like discussing the weather. The doctors stopped pretending last week. Said it could be any time now. Adrian felt something crack in his chest. Don't. Don't what? Don't be honest? We're past that now. Lena's smile was sad. I'm dying, Adrian, and I'm scared and lonely and I hurt all the time, but I'm also grateful. For what? For this. For you. For finding out that Umbrella Boy grew up and came back right when I needed him most. She coughed, weaker this time. The universe has a strange sense of timing. The universe is cruel. Maybe. But it brought you here. That can't be completely cruel. Adrian didn't know what to say to that. He sat there holding her hand, this girl who was slipping away right in front of him, and felt helpless. It was the same helplessness he'd felt watching Marcus die, the same rage at a world that took good people too soon. I wish I could fix this, he said finally. You can't. Nobody can. Lena's eyes were starting to droop. But you can stay, that's enough. It's not enough. It's everything. She fell asleep holding his hand, and Adrian sat there watching her breathe. Each breath seemed harder than the last, like her body was forgetting how to do the simple act of living. He wanted to rage at someone, hurt someone, make someone pay for this unfairness. But there was no one to hurt. Cancer didn't negotiate. Death didn't care about power or money or threats. His phone buzzed. Christoph, demanding a meeting. Adrian typed a one-word response. No. Another buzz. Chen, asking about the suppliers. Handle it. A third buzz. Dmitri, about something urgent at the docks. Not my problem today. He was watching his empire fray at the edges, watching carefully constructed deals fall apart, watching respect erode. And he didn't care. All of it, the power, the territory, the fear he'd built, seemed meaningless sitting in this hospital room. Lena woke an hour later, disoriented. How long was I out? Hour. Sorry. Stop apologizing. She smiled weakly. Can't help it. My mom raised me to be polite. Her hand moved toward the water, shaking worse than yesterday. Adrian held it for her without being asked. Thanks. You say that a lot too. Because you keep doing things worth thanking. You said that already. Did I? Lena looked confused. I'm losing track. Days blur together. Adrian felt panic rising in his throat. She was getting worse faster than he'd expected. The clarity from yesterday was fading, replaced by this foggy confusion. What day is it? Lena asked suddenly. Thursday. Thursday. She repeated it like the word was foreign. What happened to Wednesday? This is Wednesday. I meant Wednesday. Oh. She closed her eyes. I'm scared, Adrian. I know. No, I mean really scared. Like panic attack can't breathe scared. Her hand gripped his tighter, though it barely had strength. What if there's nothing? What if I close my eyes and it's just empty forever? Adrian had no comfort to offer. He didn't believe in afterlives or second chances. When you died, you died. That was it. But looking at Lena's terrified face, he couldn't say that. Then you'll rest, he said instead. No more pain, no more fear, just peace. Peace sounds lonely. Yeah. Will you remember me? After? Yes? Promise? I promise. Lena's eyes opened, focusing on him with effort. Tell me something you've never told anyone, something true. Adrian thought about deflecting, about giving her some meaningless fact that sounded intimate but wasn't. But she deserved better than that. I think about Marcus every day, he said quietly. Every single day for 11 years. And I'm tired of it. Tired of carrying him around. Tired of being angry at a world that killed him. He paused. But I'm scared if I let go of the anger, I'll lose him completely. Like the anger is all I have left. Lena was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, what if the anger is what's keeping him dead? What do you mean? What if by holding on to how he died, you're erasing how he lived? She coughed, struggling for breath. From what you've told me, Marcus was kind, happy, good, but you became the opposite, so in a way, you killed him twice. Once when he died, once when you became someone he wouldn't recognize. The words hit like a physical blow. Adrian pulled his hand away, standing up abruptly. That's not fair. Maybe not, but it's true. Lena's voice was getting weaker. He'd hate what you've become, Adrian. You know he would. You don't know anything about him. I know he had a brother who gave a stranger an umbrella in the rain. A brother who was kind without reason. That's the Marcus you're supposed to honor. Not by becoming hard and mean, but by staying soft despite everything. Adrian's hands were shaking. You don't understand. In my world, soft gets you killed. Then maybe you're in the wrong world. It's too late for that. It's never too late. Lena tried to sit up, failed. Adrian, look at me. He did, reluctantly. You have a choice, she said. Right now, today, tomorrow, you can keep being whoever you've become. Or you can remember who you were, who Marcus knew, who Umbrella Boy was. She coughed again, harder. You can't change the past, but you can change what comes next. And what comes next? After you're gone? Lena's smile was heartbreaking. That's up to you, but I hope... She had to stop, catching her breath. I hope you choose kindness. Choose to be the person who helped a scared little girl without expecting anything back. Because that person is still in there. I can see him. Adrian sat back down, feeling defeated. You're asking me to throw away everything I've built. I'm asking you to build something better. Like what? Like a life that Marcus would be proud of. Like a life where Umbrella Boy doesn't have to stay buried. Her eyes were closing again. Like a life worth remembering. She drifted off mid-sentence, leaving Adrian alone with her words. He sat there as afternoon turned to evening, as the light outside the window dimmed and the hospital settled into its nighttime rhythm. Nurses came and went. Machines beeped their warnings, and Lena slept on, each breath a little more labored than the last. Adrian thought about Marcus, about the brother who'd laughed too loud and dreamed too big, about the kid who'd forgiven Adrian for every stupid mistake, who'd looked up to him despite everything. What would Marcus think seeing Adrian now? Sitting in a hospital room, holding a dying girl's hand, questioning everything he'd become? Maybe Lena was right. Maybe he'd killed Marcus twice. Once by failing to save him, once by becoming someone Marcus wouldn't recognize. The question was, could he kill him a third time by changing? By giving up the power and control that had defined him for a decade? Adrian didn't have an answer. Didn't know if there was an answer. But sitting there in the dark, listening to Lena's labored breathing, he knew one thing for certain. He wasn't ready to watch another person die while he sat helpless. He wasn't ready to lose her yet. And maybe that meant something. Maybe that meant Umbrella Boy wasn't completely dead after all. Maybe. The stern nurse found him at 9, still sitting in the dark beside Lena's bed. You need to go, she said, but her voice was softer than before. She needs rest. Real rest. She's been sleeping for hours. I mean, you need rest too. The nurse checked the monitors, her face unreadable in the dim light. You've been here all day, 3 days in a row now. I promised I'd stay, and you did. But you can't live in this room. She adjusted Lena's IV with practiced hands. Come back tomorrow. She'll still be here. The unspoken words hung heavy. For now. She'll be here for now. Adrian stood up, his body stiff from sitting too long. He looked down at Lena's sleeping face, at the 2 roses on her bedside table already starting to wilt. Tomorrow he'd bring another, and the day after. However many days she had left. Does she have anyone else? The nurse asked quietly. Family? Friends? No, just me. The nurse studied him for a moment. Then I guess you're what she's got. Don't waste it. Adrian left without responding. The hospital corridors were emptier at night, just the hum of machines and the occasional cough from behind closed doors. He passed other rooms where other people were dying, where other families kept their vigils, but none of them felt as heavy as room 408. Marcus was waiting by the car, scrolling through his phone. He looked up when Adrian approached. Rough day, boss? Yeah. They drove in silence through streets that were Adrian's in name only. He'd claimed this territory, controlled it, profited from it. But sitting in the back of his sedan, watching the city pass by, it all felt distant. Like a game he'd been playing that suddenly stopped mattering. His phone had 37 missed calls. He turned it off. The penthouse felt wrong when he got back. Too big, too empty, too cold. Adrian stood at the window with a glass of scotch he didn't drink, thinking about what Lena had said, about Marcus hating what he'd become, about being in the wrong world. She was right. He knew she was right. But knowing didn't change the fact that he'd spent 11 years building this life. You didn't just walk away from an empire. People depended on him, not in nice ways, but still. Territory would collapse, deals would fall through, enemies would see weakness and strike, and Adrian would lose everything he'd built on Marcus's grave. But what was the alternative? Keep being this person? Keep hurting people and calling it business? Keep pushing away anything soft or real until he died alone in an expensive apartment with nothing but money and regrets? He thought about Umbrella Boy. That kid seemed like a stranger now, someone from a past life. But Lena saw him, remembered him, believed he still existed under all the armor. Adrian set down the untouched scotch and pulled out his phone. Against his better judgment, he turned it back on. Messages flooded in immediately. Chen, Christoph, Dmitri, others. All demanding attention, all urgent. He ignored them all and typed a single message to Chen. Need to talk. Tomorrow. Important. Then he turned the phone off again and tried to sleep. He dreamed of Marcus. Not the dying version in the hospital bed, but the real Marcus. 10 years old, laughing, pulling Adrian by the hand towards some new adventure. They were kids again, before sickness and death and hard lessons. And Marcus was saying something, repeating it over and over, but Adrian couldn't hear the words. He woke at dawn with Marcus's voice still echoing in his head. For the first time in years, he didn't feel angry when he thought about his brother. Just sad. Bone-deep sad for everything that had been lost. The flower shop didn't open until 9. Adrian waited outside like a stalker until the woman arrived, keys in hand. She looked surprised to see him. You're early. Need a rose? The usual? Yeah, and Adrian hesitated. Do you have anything else? Something that lasts longer? The woman's face softened. How much longer are we talking? I don't know. Not long. She understood without him having to explain. Come inside. I'll make something special. 20 minutes later, Adrian left with a rose and a small potted plant with red flowers. The woman had called it a begonia. It'll last longer than cut flowers, she'd said. And if you take care of it, it'll bloom for months, maybe years. Adrian had paid triple what she'd asked and left before she could see his face. St. Catherine's was different in the morning. More visitors, more noise, more life, trying to pretend death wasn't waiting in every room. Adrian navigated the corridors by memory now, barely noticing the turns. Room 4. 08's door was open. Inside, a doctor was talking to Lena in low tones. She looked worse than yesterday, if that was even possible. Her skin had taken on a grayish tint, and the circles under her eyes looked like bruises. The doctor glanced up when Adrian entered. Family? Friend? Lena said before Adrian could answer. Her voice was barely a whisper. I'll give you some privacy, but Lena, think about what I said. The doctor left, nodding curtly at Adrian. What did he say? Adrian asked, setting the rose and plant on the bedside table. That I should consider hospice care. That there's nothing more they can do here. Lena's eyes found the plant. What's that? Begonia. Lady at the shop said it lasts longer. Lena's face crumpled. You brought me something that'll outlive me. Adrian felt like he'd been punched. I didn't think, no, it's perfect. She reached out, touching the flowers with trembling fingers. Something to remember me by. When I'm gone. Don't talk like that. Why not? It's true. She coughed, a wet rattling sound that made Adrian's chest tighten. Could be today, could be tomorrow, but it's coming, Adrian. We both know it. He sat down heavily, the chair creaking under his weight. I'm not ready. Neither am I, but that's not how death works. Lena tried to smile. At least I got my Valentine. Got my roses, got to find out what happened to Umbrella Boy. Her hand found his. Could be worse. Could be better. Yeah. Her eyes closed. Could always be better. They sat in silence for a while. Adrian watched the begonia, its red flowers bright against the sterile white of the hospital room. A promise of life in a place of death. He wondered if it was cruel or kind to bring it. Adrian? Yeah? Tell me what you're thinking, right now. He could lie. Should lie. But Lena deserved honesty, especially now. I'm thinking about running, he admitted. About walking out that door and never coming back. Because watching you die is bringing back everything from Marcus, and I don't know if I can do this again. Lena's eyes opened. So why are you still here? Because I promised, and because... He stopped, not sure how to finish. Because what? Because you make me remember who I used to be. And I'm not sure if I hate that or need it. Maybe both. Her grip tightened weakly on his hand. Change is scary, especially when you've built your whole life around being someone else. You sound like a therapist. I sound like someone who's had a lot of time to think. She coughed again, weaker. When you're dying, you do a lot of thinking about what matters, what doesn't, who you were versus who you wish you'd been. Any conclusions? Yeah, kindness matters. Everything else is just noise. Adrian thought about his empire, his power, his carefully constructed world of fear and control. All of it noise compared to sitting in this room, holding this dying girl's hand. I talked to my lieutenant last night, he said. Told him we need to meet. About changes. Lena's face lit up despite her exhaustion. What kind of changes? I don't know yet, but I can't keep doing what I've been doing. Not after this. Not after you. He paused. You were right about Marcus. He would hate what I became, and I'm tired of disappointing him. You're not disappointing him. I did for 11 years. Then don't disappoint him today. Lena's voice was fading. Be the brother he remembered. Be Umbrella Boy. I don't know how anymore. Yes, you do. You're doing it right now. A nurse came in, the young perky one from before. She checked vitals, made notes, gave Lena more medication despite her protests. When she left, Lena was fighting to keep her eyes open. Stay, she whispered. I'm not going anywhere. No, I mean really stay. Don't run. Don't hide from this. Her breathing was labored now. Promise me you'll see it through, that you won't leave me alone at the end. Adrian felt his throat tighten. I promise. And after? Promise you'll remember, that you'll change, that you'll be better. Lena, promise me, Adrian. I promise. She smiled, and it was the saddest thing he'd ever seen. Good. That's good. Her eyes closed. I'm so tired. Then sleep. What if I don't wake up? Then I'll be here anyway. Lena's breathing evened out, but Adrian could hear the struggle in it. Each breath was a battle her body was losing. He sat there holding her hand, feeling helpless and angry and sad all at once. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it. Chen arrived at the hospital at noon, looking confused and concerned. Adrian had texted him the address, told him to come alone. Now his lieutenant stood in the doorway of room 408, staring at Lena's sleeping form. Boss, what? Outside, Adrian said quietly. Don't wake her. They walked to a small waiting area down the hall. Chen looked like he had 1,000 questions and didn't know which to ask first. Who is she? He finally said. Someone I used to know. A long time ago. And now? Now she's dying. Adrian leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted. And it's making me rethink some things. Chen's expression was carefully neutral. What kind of things? Everything. The business. What we do. Who I am. Adrian met his lieutenant's eyes. I'm thinking about stepping back. Stepping back? Or stepping out? I haven't decided yet. Chen's jaw tightened. Boss, you can't be serious. You built this from nothing. You control half the city. You just walk away, it'll collapse. Christoph will move in. Dmitri will turn. Everything you worked for doesn't matter. His words came out harder than Adrian intended. None of it matters, Chen. Not really. That's grief talking. Or guilt. Or whatever you're feeling about. Chen gestured toward room 408. About her, but you can't make decisions like this based on emotion. Why not? I made every other decision based on anger. How's that different? Chen was quiet for a moment. What do you want me to say? Nothing. I want you to listen. Adrian straightened up. I'm not making any moves yet, but I need you to start thinking about contingencies, about what happens if I'm not running things anymore. You're scaring me, boss. Good, because I'm scared too. Adrian started walking back toward room 408. I'll be here for the next few days. Handle what you can. Everything else can wait. And if it can't wait, then it wasn't that important to begin with. He left Chen standing in the hallway and returned to Lena. She was still asleep, but her breathing had gotten worse. The machines were beeping more insistently, and a nurse was adjusting settings with a worried expression. How long? Adrian asked quietly. The nurse looked at him with sympathy. Hard to say. Could be hours. Could be days. But not weeks. No, not weeks. Adrian nodded and sat back down. The nurse left, and he was alone with Lena and the machines and the ticking clock none of them could see. She woke an hour later, disoriented and scared. Adrian? Right here. I had a dream about rain, about a little girl and a boy with an umbrella. Her eyes focused on him slowly. That really happened, didn't it? I didn't imagine it. It really happened. Good. I thought maybe I was losing my mind. She coughed, and Adrian held water for her. Thanks for everything, for coming back, for staying. You don't have to thank me. I know, but I want to. Her hand found his again, the grip almost non-existent now. I need to tell you something while I still can. What? I'm not scared anymore. Her voice was soft but certain. I was terrified yesterday. Of dying, of being forgotten, of it all meaning nothing. But I'm not scared now. Why not? Because of you. Because you came back. Because Umbrella Boy remembered me even after 20 years. She smiled weakly. If one small kindness could last that long, could bring us back together like this, then maybe nothing is meaningless. Maybe it all matters. Every moment. Every choice. Adrian felt tears burning behind his eyes. He couldn't remember the last time he'd cried. Years. Maybe decades. Don't leave me, he said, and hated how broken his voice sounded. I don't have a choice. I know. But don't. Please. Lena's thumb moved slightly against his hand. The smallest gesture, but it felt enormous. You're going to be okay, Adrian. You're going to change. Going to be better. I know you will. How can you know that? Because that's who you are. Under everything. Under all the anger and fear and walls. Her breathing was getting shallower. Promise me something. Anything. Plant roses, somewhere, a garden of them. She paused, struggling for air. For me. For Marcus. For Umbrella Boy. So kindness doesn't get forgotten. I promise. Red ones. Like you brought me. Red ones. She smiled. That's good. That's really good. Her eyes started to close. Adrian? Yeah? Thank you for being my Valentine, for not letting me be alone. A tear slid down her cheek. For remembering me. Lena, it's okay. I'm ready now. Her voice was barely audible. Don't be sad. This is the good part. Where it stops hurting. Adrian gripped her hand tighter as if he could keep her here through force of will, but he could feel her slipping away, could see the light fading from her eyes. I'll remember you, he said urgently. Every day, I promise. I know. Lena's smile was peaceful. Go be good, Adrian. Be Umbrella Boy again. For me. Her eyes closed, her breathing slowed, and Adrian sat there holding her hand, watching the machines track her body's final surrender. The nurse came in at some point. Adrian didn't know when. She checked monitors, turned off alarms, and placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. I'm sorry, she said softly. Adrian couldn't speak, couldn't move. He just sat there holding Lena's hand, which was already growing cold. She was gone. This girl who'd remembered him, who'd seen through his walls, who'd asked him to be better. Gone like Marcus. Gone like everyone good in his life. But she'd left him something, a promise to keep, a garden to plant, a version of himself to rediscover. He sat with her for another hour, even after they came to take her body away. The begonia was still blooming on the bedside table, red flowers bright and alive. He took it when he finally left, carrying it carefully through the corridors of St. Catherine's. Marcus was waiting by the car, took one look at Adrian's face, and didn't ask questions. They drove back to the penthouse in silence, the plant sitting on the seat beside Adrian like a passenger. When he got upstairs, Adrian set the begonia on the windowsill where it could get sunlight. Then he sat on the floor beneath it and finally let himself cry. For Lena, for Marcus, for the boy with the umbrella who'd gotten lost somewhere along the way. He cried until there was nothing left, until he was empty and raw and broken open in ways he hadn't been since he was 16 years old. And then, slowly, he started to think about what came next, about gardens and roses and promises made to dying girls, about empire and territory and whether any of it mattered compared to being the kind of person his brother would have recognized, about change and fear and the possibility that maybe it wasn't too late after all. Outside the window, the city stretched out below him. His city, built on violence and fear. But maybe it didn't have to stay that way. Maybe there was another version of this story. One where Umbrella Boy didn't stay buried. Where kindness wasn't weakness. Where doing good didn't get you killed, it set you free. Adrian didn't know if he had the courage for that transformation, but he'd promised Lena he'd try. And Adrian Voss, whatever else he was, had never broken a promise. Not to Marcus, not to Lena, not to himself. If you or someone you know is having a difficult time, free support is available. Find resources. The funeral was small. Just Adrian, the hospital chaplain, and a funeral director who looked bored. Lena had no one else, and Adrian found himself angry about that all over again. A person's life shouldn't end with 3 strangers standing around a cheap casket in a municipal cemetery. He'd paid for everything, the casket, the plot, the headstone. It would read simply, Lena Cross, 2004 to 2026, remembered. The funeral director had asked if he wanted to add anything else. Adrian couldn't think of words big enough to contain who she'd been, so he left it at that. Remembered. It was what she'd wanted most. After they lowered the casket, after the chaplain said his empty words about peace and rest, Adrian stood alone by the grave. Rain had started again, because of course it had. The universe had a sick sense of timing. I'm going to keep my promise, he said to the freshly turned earth. I don't know how yet, but I will. No one answered. Dead people didn't. But Adrian felt lighter saying it anyway, like speaking the words made them real. He drove himself back to the city, not wanting Marcus in the car. The begonia sat on the passenger seat, still blooming. Adrian had researched how to care for it, water twice a week, indirect sunlight, fertilizer once a month. He was going to keep this plant alive if it killed him. Chen was waiting in the lobby of Adrian's building, looking uncomfortable in the expensive marble entryway. He stood when Adrian approached. Boss, I heard. I'm sorry. Thanks. Do you want to talk about it? No. Adrian kept walking toward the elevator. Chen fell into step beside him. But we need to talk about the other thing. The changes. Yeah. They rode up to the penthouse in silence. Inside, Adrian set the begonia back on its windowsill and poured 2 glasses of scotch. Chen took his, but didn't drink. I've been thinking about what you said, Chen started, about stepping back, and I think it's a mistake. Okay. Just okay? You're entitled to your opinion. Adrian sat down, suddenly exhausted. Doesn't change mine. Chen set his glass down untouched. Boss, you built this organization from nothing. You took territory no one else could hold. You made deals that shouldn't have been possible. You're respected, feared even. You walk away now, all of that crumbles. Maybe it should crumble. You don't mean that, don't I? Adrian stared into his scotch. What am I, Chen, really? Strip away the title and the reputation. What am I? You're Adrian Voss. I'm a criminal. A thug with a nice suit and an expensive apartment. Adrian looked up. I hurt people for money. I threaten them. Sometimes I do worse. And for what? So I can control streets I don't even walk on, so people I don't know can be scared of my name? Chen was quiet for a long moment. This is about her, the girl. Her name was Lena. Lena, then. This is about her dying, about you feeling guilty or sad or whatever. But boss, this will pass. Give it time. You'll remember why we do what we do. And why is that? Because we're good at it, because it pays, because the alternative is being nobody. Adrian laughed, but there was no humor in it. I'd rather be nobody than this. Chen stood up abruptly. You're not thinking straight. Take a few weeks. Grieve. Process. Then we'll talk about the business. Chen. Boss? I'm serious about this. Start making contingency plans. Figure out who could take over if I'm gone. How to divide territory. How to keep things stable. Adrian met his lieutenant's eyes. Because I'm done. Maybe not today. Maybe not next week. But soon. And if I say no, then you say no. But it doesn't change what I'm doing. Chen stared at him for a long moment, then shook his head. You're making a mistake, a big one, but I can't stop you. He moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I hope you find whatever you're looking for. After Chen left, Adrian sat alone with his scotch and his begonia and his thoughts. The city sprawled below him, lights coming on as evening fell. Somewhere out there, people were living normal lives, going to normal jobs, having normal problems. They weren't perfect, nobody was, but they weren't building empires on fear either. Could he have that? Could someone like him just walk away and become ordinary? Lena had thought so, had believed Umbrella Boy was still in there, waiting to resurface. But she'd been dying, seeing the world through the lens of someone who had nothing left to lose. Maybe she'd been wrong. Maybe Adrian was too far gone to change. His phone rang. Christoph. Adrian answered. What? Voss, we need to talk about the warehouse situation. You gave me Parkside, but I still want... Take the warehouses. Silence. What? Take them. They're yours. Just like that? Just like that. What's the catch? No catch. I'm done fighting over territory. Adrian stood up, walking to the window. You want the warehouses? They're yours. You want anything else? We'll negotiate. But I'm done with turf wars. Are you sick or something? You sound weird. I'm fine, just tired. Tired. Christoph's voice was suspicious. Voss, what's going on? Nothing you need to worry about. Do we have a deal or not? Yeah, we have a deal. Christoph paused. You sure you're okay? Never better. He hung up before Christoph could ask more questions. Then he called Dmitri and made similar concessions. Then 3 other lieutenants, adjusting deals that had seemed important a week ago and now felt meaningless. By midnight, Adrian had given away 1/3 of his territory and restructured half his operations. Chen would be furious when he found out. The others would think he'd lost his mind. Maybe he had, but it felt right in a way nothing had felt right in years. He slept on the couch again, too tired to make it to the bedroom. The begonia watched from the windowsill, its red flowers catching the city lights. Adrian fell asleep thinking about gardens and promises and dying girls who saw good in broken men. The next morning, he went back to the flower shop. The woman looked up with a sad smile. I heard, I'm so sorry. News traveled fast, apparently. Or maybe she'd just guessed from Adrian's face. Thanks, he said. I need to ask you something. Anything. How do you plant a garden, like a real one? In the ground. Her expression softened. For her? For her, and for someone else. Someone I lost a long time ago. The woman came around the counter. What kind of garden are you thinking? Roses. Red ones. Lots of them. Adrian felt stupid saying it out loud, but pushed through anyway. She asked me to, before she died. Asked me to plant a garden so kindness wouldn't be forgotten. The woman's eyes filled with tears. That's beautiful. Can you help me? Of course. But you'll need land. Roses need space to grow, room to spread out. Adrian thought about his penthouse, his expensive life, the things he'd accumulated that meant nothing. I'll find the land. You teach me the rest. She did. Spent 2 hours explaining soil and drainage and pruning and care. Wrote everything down in neat handwriting on the back of business cards. Sent him home with rose catalogs and instructions and an enthusiasm that felt out of place in his dark world. But maybe that was the point. Maybe planting roses was supposed to feel out of place for someone like him. He spent the next 3 days researching land. Found a plot on the eastern edge of the city, overlooked and forgotten. 1/2 acre of empty space between industrial buildings and residential blocks. Nobody wanted it. Wrong zoning, weird shape, contaminated soil from an old factory. Perfect. Adrian bought it cash, no questions asked. Then hired contractors to clean the soil, install proper drainage, build a fence. They looked at him like he was crazy when he explained he wanted to plant roses. Crime bosses didn't garden. But they took his money and did the work anyway. Chen found out on day 4 and showed up at the penthouse looking furious. What the hell are you doing? Starting a garden. A garden. Chen's voice was flat. You're buying land to plant flowers while our organization is falling apart. The organization is fine. I restructured, that's all. You gave away territory, made concessions. Christoph is telling everyone you've gone soft. Chen paced angrily. Do you know what happens when people think you're weak? They test you, they push, they take everything. Then let them take it. Boss, I'm serious, Chen. Let them take it. I don't care anymore. Adrian turned from the window where he'd been watching the begonia. There are more important things than territory. Like what? Flowers? Yeah. like flowers. Chen stared at him like he'd grown a second head. You've lost it. Completely lost it. Maybe, or maybe I'm finally finding it. Adrian picked up the begonia, carrying it to better light. This plant is going to outlive me, Chen. 50 years from now, maybe 100, it'll still be blooming, long after my empire is dust, long after anyone remembers Adrian Voss controlled these streets. So what? You're retiring to garden? That's your plan? I don't have a plan. Not yet. Adrian set the plant down carefully. But I know I can't keep doing this. Can't keep being this person. Something has to change. Change into what? I don't know. Someone better. Someone Marcus wouldn't be ashamed of. Chen's anger deflated slightly. Your brother. Yeah. Boss, your brother died 11 years ago. You can't live your life for a ghost. I'm not living for a ghost. I'm trying to live like the person I was before he died. Before I decided kindness was weakness and fear was strength. Adrian faced his lieutenant. I'm trying to remember what it felt like to be good. Chen sat down heavily. This is really happening. You're really walking away. Not today. Not tomorrow. But soon. Adrian sat across from him. I need you to hold things together while I figure out the transition. Keep the peace. Make sure nothing collapses. And then what? Then you take over. Or someone else does. Or maybe we dismantle the whole thing piece by piece. I don't know yet. You're asking me to run an empire I don't want while you play in a garden. I'm asking you to give me time to do this right. Adrian leaned forward. Please, Chen, I know it's a lot, but I need this. Need to prove I can be someone different. Chen was quiet for a long time. Then he sighed. How long? A few months? Maybe more. And you'll stay available? Still make decisions when needed? Until we figure out the transition, yeah. This is insane. But Chen's voice held acceptance now, not anger. But I'll do it. For you. Because you're my boss and my friend, even if you're being an idiot. Thanks. Don't thank me. Thank me when this doesn't get us all killed. After Chen left, Adrian stood at the window and looked at the city. His city. Except it wasn't really his, was it? He'd claimed it, controlled it, but he'd never loved it. Never saw it as anything but territory to conquer. But Lena had loved this city. Had grown up in it, laughed in it, cried in it. Somewhere out there was the building where she'd lived with her mother. The school where Adrian had walked her home in the rain. The hospital where she'd died. Maybe that was the city worth knowing. Not the one divided into territories and deals, but the one where real people lived real lives. Where kindness mattered and cruelty hurt, and every small choice rippled outward. The contractors finished the land prep 2 weeks later. Adrian went to inspect it, standing in the middle of his half-acre plot with dirt under his fingernails for the first time in his adult life. The city noise was distant here. Traffic and sirens and life happening somewhere else while he stood in empty space. This was going to be his garden, his promise to Lena, his memorial to Marcus, his proof that Umbrella Boy hadn't died completely. The woman from the flower shop came to help him plan the layout. They walked the plot together, talking about sun exposure and wind patterns and which rose varieties would grow best. You're serious about this, she said, impressed. Yeah. Most people say they'll plant a garden and never do. Too much work, too much time. I've got time. And work? Adrian smiled slightly. Learning to like work again. They ordered 300 rose bushes. A ridiculous number. The woman tried to talk him down, saying he should start smaller, but Adrian refused. Lena had asked for a garden. He was giving her a garden. The roses arrived in early March, bare root and dormant. Adrian planted them himself, refusing contractors or workers. Just him and a shovel and 300 holes to dig. His hands blistered, his back ached. He'd never been so tired or so satisfied in his life. Chen thought he'd lost his mind. Christoph and Dmitri were circling, testing boundaries. The organization was strained and unstable. But Adrian kept digging, kept planting, kept watering the beginnings of something that might bloom. He visited Lena's grave every week, bringing updates. Got the roses in the ground. They look like sticks right now, but the lady says they'll bloom by June. You'll like them. I went with all reds, like you said. No response, obviously, but talking to her made the work feel less lonely. Marcus's grave was across town in a different cemetery. Adrian hadn't visited in years. too angry at his brother for dying and too ashamed of what he'd become. But one Saturday morning, he drove out there with a rose from the begonia plant. The grave was overgrown with weeds. Adrian felt a stab of guilt seeing it. He'd spent 11 years blaming Marcus for dying and hadn't even kept his resting place clean. "I'm sorry," he said, clearing the weeds. "I'm sorry I let you down. Sorry I became someone you wouldn't recognize. Sorry I blamed you for leaving when it wasn't your fault." He set the rose on the headstone. "But I'm trying to change. Trying to be the brother you deserved. There's this girl, well, she's gone now. But she knew me. Knew the real me from before. And she asked me to be better, so I'm trying." The wind rustled through nearby trees. Adrian sat on the ground beside his brother's grave and told him everything. About Lena, about the umbrella, about promises and gardens, and learning to be human again. "I don't know if I can do it," he admitted. "Don't know if someone like me can change, but I'm going to try. For her. For you. For that stupid kid who shared his umbrella without thinking about it." He stayed until the sun started setting, then drove home feeling lighter than he had in years. The garden grew slowly. By April, the rose bushes had leafed out, showing green. By May, buds appeared. Adrian tended them obsessively, following every instruction the flower shop woman had given him. Water, fertilize, prune, protect. His organization was transitioning. Chen handled more day-to-day operations. Adrian made fewer decisions, gave away more territory, focused on graceful withdrawal rather than maintaining control. Some people thought he was dying. Others thought he'd been threatened. None of them guessed the truth, that he'd simply decided to stop. Christoph called one evening in late May. "Voss, I heard a rumor you're retiring." "Not retiring, changing careers." "To what, gardening?" Christoph laughed. "I thought that was a joke." "Not a joke. Got 300 rose bushes that need tending." "You're serious. Dead serious." "Well, good luck with that, I guess." Christoph paused. "For what it's worth, you were a tough opponent. Respected you, even when we were enemies." "Thanks, Christoph." "What are you going to do after the roses?" "I don't know yet. Maybe nothing. Maybe something completely different." Adrian looked at the begonia, which had doubled in size and was covered in blooms. "Figure out who I am when I'm not trying to control everything." "That's deep, Voss." "Yeah, well, I had a good teacher." The first roses bloomed on June 3rd. Adrian stood in his garden, surrounded by red flowers as far as he could see, and felt something break open in his chest. Not breaking like before. Not pain or anger or grief. Breaking like a shell cracking, like something that had been trapped finally getting free. He took photos with his phone, wishing Lena could see it. She'd have loved this. Would have walked through the rows of roses, touching petals, breathing in the scent. Would have told him it was perfect. But she was gone. And Marcus was gone. And all Adrian had was this garden and a promise kept and the faint hope that maybe, just maybe, he could become someone they'd both be proud of. He hired a local charity to maintain the garden, made it open to the public, free admission, put up a small sign at the entrance, the Lena Cross Memorial Garden. In memory of kindness. People came. Not many at first, just a few curious locals who saw the roses and wanted a closer look. But word spread. Soon families were having picnics between the rows. Couples were taking engagement photos. Kids were running through paths while their parents relaxed on benches Adrian had installed. The garden became something alive, something real, something that mattered more than any territory he'd ever controlled. Chen came to visit one evening, finding Adrian deadheading spent blooms. "Boss, the transition is almost complete. Another month and you'll be out entirely." "Good. So what then? You just garden for the rest of your life?" "Maybe. Or maybe I do something else." Adrian stood up, wiping his hands. "There's a community center in the old neighborhood, where Marcus and I grew up. It's falling apart, needs funding. I was thinking about helping." "Helping how?" "Money. Time, whatever they need." Adrian looked at his lieutenant. "Turns out I'm good at organizing things. Just need to organize things that matter instead of things that hurt." Chen smiled slightly. "You really did change." "Trying to." "No, I mean you did. Past tense." Chen gestured at the garden. "The Adrian I knew 6 months ago would never do this. Would never walk away from power. Would never admit to being wrong. But you did. You changed. Because of Lena. Because of you. She just reminded you who you could be. But you did the work. You made the choice. Chen extended his hand. I'm proud of you, boss. Adrian shook it, surprised by the emotion in his throat. Thanks. I'll finish the transition. Make sure everything's stable. Then I'm out too. You're leaving? Yeah, watched you change and realized I didn't want to be in this life anymore either. Chen smiled. Might open a restaurant. My mom always said I should. Figure now's a good time. After Chen left, Adrian walked through his garden as the sun set. Red roses everywhere, blooming and beautiful and alive. He thought about Lena asking him to plant them. About Marcus, who'd deserved better. About Umbrella Boy, who'd gotten buried under anger and pain. That boy was back now. Not the same. You couldn't unlearn 11 years of hard lessons. But close enough. Good enough. Adrian stopped at the center of the garden where he'd planted the biggest rose bush. He'd carved a small stone marker for the base. For Lena, who remembered kindness. For Marcus, who deserved better. For the boy with the umbrella, who never really died. I kept my promise, he said to the roses, to the memory of two people who'd shaped him. I changed. I built the garden. I'm trying to be better. The wind rustled through the flowers, carrying their sweet scent. Somewhere nearby, a family was laughing. A couple was taking photos. Life was happening in this space he'd created, this memorial to kindness in a city that desperately needed it. And Adrian realized something that made him smile. This garden would outlast him, would outlast his empire and his reputation and his name. 50 years from now, 100, people would still come here, would still see red roses and feel something good, would still benefit from one small act of remembrance. That was immortality. Not power or fear or control, but kindness planted in the ground, growing season after season, touching lives he'd never meet. Lena had been right. One small kindness could last forever, rippling outward in ways you couldn't predict. The umbrella shared in the rain had brought them back together 20 years later. The roses planted now would bloom for generations. Maybe that was the point of being human, not to be perfect or powerful or remembered for greatness, but to do small good things and trust they'd matter, to plant seeds knowing you might not see the harvest, to change because it was right, not because it was easy. Adrian left the garden as evening turned to night, the roses dark shapes against darker sky. He drove back to his penthouse one last time, looking at the city spread below him. Tomorrow he'd move to a smaller place, something normal, something that fit the person he was becoming rather than the person he'd been. The begonia sat on the windowsill, still blooming after all these months. Adrian picked it up carefully. This plant that had outlived Lena, that would outlive him too. Time to go, he said to it. Time to start over. He took one last look at the penthouse, at the expensive empty space that had been his throne room. Then he walked out with his plant and didn't look back. Some changes happened slowly, some happened all at once. Adrian's had been both. Slow accumulation of small choices, sudden recognition of who he'd been versus who he wanted to be. But he was different now. Not perfect. Not healed. Not without scars or regrets or moments of doubt. But different. Better. More human. Umbrella Boy had come back. Not because he'd never left, but because Adrian had finally stopped running from him. Had finally accepted that kindness wasn't weakness. That caring wasn't dangerous. That being good was harder than being feared, but infinitely more worthwhile. He thought about Lena often, about her face when he'd brought that first rose, about her hand in his as she died, about her final words, "Go be good, Adrian. Be Umbrella Boy again." He was trying, every day, in small ways, helping the community center, maintaining the garden, treating people with basic human decency, learning to live a life that wasn't built on fear. It was harder than running an empire, required more courage, more vulnerability, more faith that doing right would somehow be enough. But it was worth it. Worth the risk, worth the uncertainty, worth rebuilding from nothing. Because this time, he was building something that mattered. Something that would bloom long after he was gone. Something that proved one dying girl's belief had been right all along. That Umbrella Boy was still in there, waiting to be remembered. And in remembering who he'd been, Adrian had finally discovered who he could become.